All right, welcome to the Big Texas Podcast presented by Texas Young Republicans. I am your host, Jordan Overturf, bringing to you a surprise episode featuring a candidate from HD 47. That's right. Don Zimmerman joined us by phone to chat a bit about the race and round out our last in the ongoing series featuring candidates from this race in House District 47. So thank you to him for coming on. We'll get to him in a minute. Just want to remind you that early voting is going on in HD 28 and HD 148. These are the two special election runoffs that are happening in the Houston and Fort Bend County areas. Gary Gates is running in HD 28. Louis LaRota, friend of the podcast, is running in HD 148. Early voting ends on Friday and election day is Tuesday, January 28th. If you want to find out more about this, we've got some deployments happening this weekend that you can be involved with. You can go to the Texas Young Republicans Facebook page or find us on Instagram and Twitter at TexasYRs. Great place for you to follow all the deployments that we're doing, phone banking, anything we can do to make sure we get Republican candidates elected. Republican candidates up and down the ballot. But right now, this is the priority. They're in HD 28 and HD 148. It's setting the tone. There was an Associated Press article that was talking about how the tone for 2020 is actually going to be set in these two races, highlighting specifically Gary Gates and HD 28. The Democrats have come far and wide, current and failed presidential candidates are weighing in, trying to get Democrats activated in HD 28. So if you live in Fort Bend County and you are a Republican and you do not want to see your district flipped to be a Democrat district, you need to get out there and vote. Early voting. Again, it's going on now. Make sure you vote by election day on Tuesday, January 28th. Okay, off my early voting election soapbox. Don Zimmerman is a former Austin City Councilman who served in 2014 to 2016. He talks a lot about his time there and some of the things that he saw, ways that the state government can get involved to help correct some of the issues with these cities that seem to be forgetting their voters and leaving them behind or ignoring their pleas for answers and solutions to the real problems that are facing them. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of the way. Thank you again to Don for joining us. Again, HD 47 is an important race, and we are trying to turn it back to a red district. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Mr. Don Zimmerman.
I had a friend that come to me in January a year ago, a political consultant, and he said, "Hey, you ought to run for state rep. We did some polling on your name ID, and you could win state rep." And I said, "Well, I think the incumbent, Paul Workman, the former state rep, I think he's going to run, and I think he has a better chance, to knock out the freshman Democrat than I do because he's got name ID and he's got connections to donors and a lot of experience." So in April, Paul Workman decided not to run again. So then I started looking hard at the race. And I phoned up Ellen Troxclair, my former Austin council member colleague, and I said, "Hey, Ellen, can you run for Texas House District 47 because you would have the best chance to beat the freshman Democrat?" And so she said she wasn't able to run. And at that point, I said, "Well, if you're not running, I'm the next best possibility to take that seat back from the Democrats." So that's how I got in. So I got started in early May running for HD 47.
And what has that experience been like, and how does it kind of differ from being on the campaign trail as a councilman?
Well, I ran for state rep once back in 2006 for House District 50. I've lived in the same place for 20 years, but back in 2006, I was districted into House District 50. And that was a three-way primary. I came in first place on election day, but I lost the primary runoff back in 2006. So I have some perspective from that race. I have to say what's different now compared to my city council races is when I won office in 2014, it was a gubernatorial year. And it was, Barack Barack Obama's lame duck year. So the Democrats were kind of down, and the Republicans were ready for some change, right, to get rid of the Democrats in the White House. So it was a good time in 2014. In 2016, I definitely underestimated the power, the gravity of the hate Trump campaign. That's what I can say in hindsight. And in hindsight, that campaign was lost simply by my opponents putting out hate mail pieces saying, my photo and Donald Trump's photo and, the big ugly messages, Don Zimmerman is the Donald Trump of Austin. And that's pretty much all they had to do to knock me out of the city council. And in hindsight, it's probably a good thing that the voters sent me home, because I don't think my cognitive psyche could tolerate 4 more years of that lunacy on that socialist Austin City Council. So it was good that I got back into my engineering job, and I'm currently doing laser scanning microscopy at a medical imaging company. So I'm back into the high-tech business.
Well, and that adds a nice dynamic to this race, which has 3 lawyers, a peace officer, and someone who's in tech, a big part of the economy here in Travis County. As you go out talking to voters, first of all, being called the Donald Trump of Austin has to work in your favor for this primary, don't you think?
I think it works for me now to the extent it worked against me in 2016, honestly. Because when Donald Trump went in, there was all this hate and propaganda and personal attack and ridicule and mockery. And so I think people were justifiably concerned, what are we going to get out of a Trump presidency? So, here we are 3.5 years later, and we're thinking, this is remarkable how well the economy is doing, what Trump has been doing on border security. We've been working on trade deals. We have not yet gotten into World War III. The job market, the stock market's hitting new highs every week. So I don't think anybody could imagine, how well things have turned out in the first Trump term. So, yeah, it's great now. It's kind of remarkable turnaround that we've seen.
Now, are those federal issues working well for you as you're talking to constituents, or what are some of the issues that they're bringing up to you as you're out, engaging at the door, out at events?
The biggest issues, of course, are the out-of-control property taxes. That's common all over the district, but the district is very, very large. And there are parts of it that were in my old District 6 council area, and the people there, in addition to taxes, they consider the homelessness and the traffic congestion. Now, people are expressing a lot of anger at Austin's zoning changes, where they intend to transfer far more power for zoning and centralized planning over to unelected government bureaucrats and to bypass the voters and property owners. So there's increasing anger about that. But I have to say, it is just astonishing how crazy the Austin City Council has become after the departure of Ellen Troxclair, and before she left, of course, I got unelected. And now it's just an echo chamber for progressive socialist extremism. And it's very, very serious. And it's going to work in our favor. It's certainly going to work in Republicans' favor in 2020. Even the Democrats are really angry at what Austin has done and how extreme they've become.
Now, some of the pushback on that, though, is that there has been an argument that state government is overstepping its bounds with cities and the authority that they're passing down through policy. Do you think that it has come to the point where the legislature has to be doing more in these areas, has to be coming down harder on cities that are, failing to serve the citizens who are there paying taxes and contributing to the economy?
Well, it's an excellent question, and it really kind of goes back to what is your philosophy of government in the first place? And being a small government constitutional Ron Paul Republican, the whole purpose of government is to defend liberty, life, liberty, and property. That's the purpose of government. So when the government becomes rogue, like Austin is, and it begins to assault taxpayers, when it ignores public safety and these homeless ordinances that make our streets dangerous, okay? When the Austin City Council seeks to implement its own gun control and to flagrantly violate state and federal laws on Second Amendment rights, when the city government defies Senate Bill 22, which prohibited taxpayer funding of abortion, and they say, well, we're going to provide $150,000 for abortion anyway. What I'm saying is the level of lawlessness in the city of Austin is astonishing. It's really astonishing.
Now,
one of my former colleague, Greg Kassar, the Socialist Council member, he staged a sit-in and got himself arrested, protesting Senate Bill 4, which was banning sanctuary cities. It says, hey, you can't violate federal law in harboring and aiding and abetting illegal immigrants in the city limits. That's a violation of federal law, and it endangers the life and property of Texans. So the state has to take action against the city because the city is a lawless, extremist actor. Here, let me give you a final thought. The Austin City Council is fond of saying, well, state government is interfering with our local control. Well, my response is the reason you exist is for local liberty, not for local control. The state establishes city government to take care of common infrastructure, roads, water, wastewater, maybe an electrical utility, provide for some public safety. But that's not what the city government does. The city government sees itself as a sovereign, authoritarian ruler, and it can pass any law that it wants to in the name of local control. So I think you can figure out by now, I am not a fan of local government in Central Texas.
Now, is that a message that is resonating out in the further reaches of the district? Because only a small portion of it actually picks up Austin proper. Most of it is West Travis County, these cities on the outskirts of these problems, but still dealing with issues that are a result of Austin. So that's kind of my question is this message resonating with voters out in that part of the district?
Well, I think people are starting to figure this out. What I can say to you is California is to America what Austin is to Texas. All right? If you live in Lakeway or Bee Caves or Lago Vista or one of these more conservative surrounding areas, the city of Austin is your political enemy. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you are stuck in ridiculous gridlock traffic on Ranch Road 620, which is really an artery for HD 47 in Western Travis County. And so 30 years ago, TxDOT had road plans all around Travis County to put in a loop, right, to put in expanded roadways. And starting back in the 80s, the city of Austin started to apply political pressure against TxDOT to destroy these road plans. They started to say, we don't want any of your road funds. We're going to stay a small little college town, and we're concerned about the golden cheek warbler. So we're going to buy up all this land, prohibit development, and restrict the building of roads. Austin still doesn't have a loop around the city, and the cause of that is the Austin city government. If you are the city of Lakeway or the city of Bee Caves, you don't have the political power that Austin has, and you can't make those roads go in the way that Austin can stop those roads from going in. So the point I have to make to our suburbs is that Austin is making your life miserable, and they have plans to do a lot more, including spreading this homelessness all over the areas right up to the edges of Austin and even beyond. And the local government here is also an extremist Democrat political organization, talking about the Travis County government. The Travis County government is also able to promote the expansion of subsidized housing outside the city limits of Austin, and they intend to do that with subsidized housing projects. I don't think people understand how serious this problem is of municipal and local government, how extreme they are, and how they pose a threat to our suburbs outside the city.
Now,
so part of my campaign is to educate people on this based on my very, very extensive experience.
Now, other parts of Texas certainly aren't immune to the homelessness situation. I used to live in Temple for a long time, and homelessness was a serious issue that even that smaller town of, about 100,000 was grappling with. But it seems like other cities are weathering the storm a little bit better than that. What do you think it is about Austin that has allowed it to grow to this level? What has?
Well, no, there's a simple answer to that, and it's that Austin has more progressive socialist extremism than the other cities. It is the most extreme democratic socialist city in the state of Texas. They are at the cutting edge of pushing cultural Marxism and the explosive cancerous growth of government right onto the area. They are just leading the pack. When you say the other areas don't have as big a problem with homelessness, that's true. But here, the city council just doubled their budget or tripled their budget up to about $65 million, right? Subsidizing homelessness. And of course, what that's going to do, as we know from history, it's going to make the problem worse. But that sets the stage for the government to come back in a year or two and demand it be doubled again, $120 million. And Mayor Adler has already called publicly for the state of Texas to subsidize the homeless with hundreds of millions of dollars, like they did in California.
Well, do you think that's
no secret, what's going on and what's behind it?
Does that sound like a policy that the governor is going to put forward? And what would your response be to Mayor Adler from a policy position?
So I know Adler personally. I've been to his multi-million-dollar condo across the street from the downtown Death Star. The Democrats call that Austin City Hall. And he's a very, very intelligent attorney. And I don't believe for a second that he is rationally believing that his policies are going to do some good here. I think he's married to a radical ideology. And I think the Democrats know that these policies of homeless subsidies are simply going to make the problem worse. But the benefit for them is they can demand more money. And what they do with those tens of millions of dollars is they offer grants to nonprofit organizations that turn out to be run by partisan Democrat interests that in turn support the unions and give money back to the politicians and provide campaign financing for bond elections, the things that increase our debt and taxes, that provide more subsidies for more homeless so they can hire more nonprofits. It is a vicious, vicious cycle. And it's how Democrats take over states by taking over cities.
But what can the legislature do to, crack down on this? I spent the last year and a half listening to Mayor Adler decry, the oppression of the legislature and SB2, the property tax reform measure, and talk about how he couldn't afford to handle basic increases in the cost of government, yet he is out there pushing for, multi-billion-dollar bond packages to expand the convention center when homelessness is spreading throughout this county. What can be done? Like how do we, from a policy position, push back on these agendas and keep them from spreading through the rest of the state?
Well, let me answer that. It's a great question. What we're saddled with right now in the Austin area is a very clear majority of Democrat voters who support the democratic socialism that's going on in Austin. Okay, that is a given. I've been there and done that. And the voters are not going to just tomorrow throw out all the Democrats at Austin City Hall and hire more people. My proposal for how we go at this from a high level is I want to convince the Texas Attorney General's office and the governor that we need a task force at the Attorney General's office of CPAs and fraud investigators and a team of lawyers that will go in and investigate and prosecute the cities for violating the law and to demand professional accounting of how some of our money is being spent. So based on my experience at council, I'm going to guess there are many, many millions of dollars of taxpayers' money that are simply disappearing down black holes. And I'm talking about fraud, okay? Because as an Austin City Council member, you have pretty much zero visibility into the details of the budget and where this money is going. We don't know where the money is going as an elected Austin City Council. And here's what happens if you ask questions, specific questions about where money is going. The bureaucrats stonewall you and they don't answer. They just don't answer because they know that there's nothing you can do to bureaucrats if you demand an accounting for money that you're entitled to under the law and they simply don't give it to you. They stonewall you. There's nothing you can do. So I found it impossible as a council. Let me give you one quick example. Do you remember the Northeast wood chip burning plant from Austin Energy that was passed back in? Yeah. So this was a big boondoggle that gathered a lot of attention, and the city council under Lee Leffingwell unanimously approved this $2.3 billion Austin Energy contract. None of the city council members ever saw the contract. None of them saw it, and they all voted for it. So when I got elected, I went to Austin Energy and I said, you know what? I'm going to see that contract, the $2.3 billion contract with Austin Energy for the wood chip burning plant. Because by that time, everybody knew it was a scam, you know. And the bureaucrats stonewalled me for 2 weeks. And I said, I tell you what, you have that contract for me tomorrow, or this is going to be on the news, and I'm going to bring litigation against you. In other words, I had to threaten them with public exposure and a lawsuit to get a document they should have handed to me the next, right? So this is what you're faced with. So I'm still the only council member that has ever seen this $2.3 billion rip-off of the taxpayers. And we don't have time to go into it. But the point I'm trying to make is that your elected officials at the city level don't know where the money's going, okay? And the way to solve that is to get state government involved who has oversight power and who could demand an accounting for how the money is being spent. Now, once that happens, eventually we're going to bust open some kind of very widespread corruption that's going to result in some criminal prosecution. And I think that's how you break through, you know, the little cabal that's controlling the government right now. And that's the beginning of getting more honest people elected and getting rid of dishonest bureaucrats who currently control the political machine in Austin.
Speaking of people getting elected, what do you think it's going to take for a Republican to win in House District 47 this cycle? And what is it about you and your background that you think helps you on your path to victory?
Well, those are great questions. And let me start with, how do you analyze the demographics, the voting patterns, and the numbers? So there's a lot of different ways that you can analyze voter demographics in any particular area. So I think we have one candidate in HD 47 who insists that HD 47 is purple, but it's not Republican. When you say that a district is purple, I think what you mean by that is you have to convince some of the Democrats to come over and vote for you. That's my interpretation of what you mean when you have a purple district. Our analysis of HD 47 says that if we turn out the Republican vote and all of the independents or the swing voters who lean Republican, we win. We do not have to convince Democrats to vote for the Republican HD 47 candidate. That's our analysis of the situation. And based on that, if you look at my record as a fiscal conservative, as someone who never backs down to progressive intimidation or slander, somebody that has the courage to stand up and go all the way to the courtroom to enforce the rule of law against the other side. And what I mean by the other side is the Democrat socialists or the bureaucrats who think they don't have to follow the law. So I think I'm 59 years old. I'm the oldest candidate. I've been elected to office twice. I was the president of my utility district back in 2002, and I sued the city of Austin for illegal taxation, waged a political war for about 7 years. It took 7 years to push our lawsuit through the courts, but we finally won at the Texas Supreme Court, and we eliminated a property tax and saved $18 million for our constituents. No one has experienced even coming close to that. And so they have no idea how difficult it is to fight the Democrat opposition. But I do have that experience. So that's why I think I'm going to win this race.
So what are some, obviously rooting out corruption within our cities and addressing the homelessness issue and trying to bring solutions as well as beat back the spread in Austin seem to be big passion issues for you. But what are some other issues that you are hoping to address in the legislature or that constituents or voters have been talking to you about?
Well, there's two parts to that. One of them is the 5 legislative priorities of the Republican Party of Texas. And I support all 5 of those enthusiastically. But when it comes to your local voters in HD 47, I think the one issue that unifies voters the most, including independents and even some conservative-leaning Democrats, it's the traffic congestion quagmire. I'm a mechanical engineer. I joke with people that because I have a bachelor's and a master's in mechanical engineering, I have 2 Texas A&M degrees, and that makes me half as smart as the average Aggie. But I know a lot about complex problem solving, and this issue of traffic congestion is a very complex political problem to solve, especially considering the environmental extremism. But I think I'm well prepared to tackle this problem, and it's going to be my top priority for HD 47 locally. That is to get a freeway loop around the western part of the city, and finally have one traffic loop around the city of Austin. So that is my general election goal. We're already working on that today. I have some ideas that I put on my website, www.donfortexas.com. We have some specific proposals for how to fund this new freeway, and it starts with legislation to allow our voters in the transit sales tax transit area, that would be the Cap Metro Transit Authority. There's somewhere around 300 to 400 million of taxes that are being largely wasted on transit boondoggles. I intend to pass amendments to the transportation code to allow us as voters to petition to take half of the money that's being wasted by Cap Metro and reallocate that money to traffic congestion relief like a Western Travis County freeway. So that's where hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of existing tax money could be reallocated to solve our congestion problem.
So that
is the main issue that I'm going to use for the 2020 election. It's solving the traffic congestion.
And this is your way of letting taxpayers know that it won't be a toll loop to get around the city?
Well, we have toll sections already. If you look at a map of the western part of Austin, we have SH 45 that goes from I-35 in the Round Rock area, and it comes down to the northern part of HD 47, and it stops. We have another section of toll road, SH 45, in the southwest part of HD 47. So my vision is to connect those 2 sections of toll road with a freeway in between the 2 sections of existing tolled road. And the beauty of that for HD 47 constituents is that HD 47, we're going to be paying for the local section that is not tolled. But if you want to come through IH 35, from Temple or Dallas, you're not going to want to come down there because that road is tolled, right? You'll have to have 2 sections of tolling if you want to enjoy the freeway route. And I think that'll cut down on the number of people that try to skip IH 35 and come through Western Travis County on this new section of freeway loop.
Now, one question we've been asking all the HD 47 candidates is where do you stand in terms of criminal justice reform, and what are some policies that you support or areas where you think we can improve criminal justice here in the state of Texas?
Well, I would start with these outrageous civil asset forfeitures. Where police law enforcement will confiscate somebody's property, make an accusation that this cash or that vehicle is being used in drug running or whatever their excuse is. They confiscate your assets, and now you have to pay lawyers and fight in court to try to get your property back. So that's the first reform that's got to be pushed through. I do think we over-criminalize people. I don't believe that the drug war has been effective. Like, as I said before, I'm a Ron Paul Republican, and I think drugs need to be regulated by the state like we regulate tobacco and alcohol. I don't agree with the drug prohibitions the way they're being forced, because they empower criminal organizations to run drugs. We had this problem back in the 20s and 30s with alcohol prohibition that gave rise to organized criminal cartels, back in the 20s and 30s. There's nothing new under the sun here. I don't think the marijuana criminalization was a good idea. It was a bad idea from day one that needs to be addressed. There are a lot of issues on this. The Texas Public Policy Foundation has a researcher, I believe his name is Mark Levin. He's done some terrific research on the problem we have with too many laws that'll put you in jail. I think we don't even know how many laws exist that'll put you in prison. That stuff is really out of control. But it's an area I do aim to tackle once I get into office, but I don't have the specifics right now. I just gave you a couple of highlights of priorities that I see.
Nice. Well, shout out to Mark and the Right on Crime crew over at TPPF. They're doing good work, working at the federal.
They do great work.
Yeah, working at the federal and state level. Well, Don,
they need more help in the legislature. Let me tell you something that frustrates me about the think tanks. They don't have enough help in the legislature. You can do all this great research, and you show up at a state representative's desk, and you put all this rational thought in front of them, and they walk away from it because their political consultant said the polling said that's a bad idea. I don't know what their excuses are. Maybe they're afraid of losing their reelection. I'm not sure what the problem is, but I'm an engineer. I think for a living. And when you give me a rock-solid, rational explanation and a strategy, I'm going to go with it. And that's what we need to have in elected officials. People that have the courage to not be intimidated by political correctness, make good on their promises, stick to the Republican platform and push it through, and just be smart about what your priorities are, like getting a Western Travis County freeway loop. That is absolutely a winning issue.
Well, I'm going to be at the TPPF policy orientation for 3 days this week, so I'm looking forward to being at that convention and unwrapping some of the topics that they're trying to address over there. Don, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to find you, voters want to learn more about your policies and platforms, websites, social media, where's the best place to reach you?
Facebook, Texans for Zimmerman. Our website, www.donfortexas.com, and of course our donate link is there as well. We'd love to have people come on board. I think we're going to be successful, and appreciate your time on the interview.
No, thank you so much, Don. It was great to be able to get all 5 Republican HD 47 candidates on the podcast, and this is a great forum for us to be able to reach out to you candidates and really get down to where you stand on some of these issues. So thank you again for taking the time. I appreciate it, brother.
All right. Godspeed. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you again to Don Zimmerman for joining us. Rounding out our last in the ongoing series of candidates from House District 47, Republican candidates looking to turn that district back to a Republican-held seat in the Texas legislature. If you want to find out more for Don, you can find him on Facebook, Texans for Zimmerman, or at his website, donfortexas, all spelled out.com. Thank you again to all the candidates in HD 47 and all the candidates who have joined us so far in the Big Texas podcast. If you want to get involved, if you want to be a part of this show, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at Big Texas Podcast, or make sure you're following Texas Young Republicans on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you again so much. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And you know what? We're just going to keep on going. March 3rd is not that far away. There are plenty of candidates for us to talk to. I'll be heading north to Dallas this weekend so I can talk to candidates in North Texas. If you live out in West Texas, in the Panhandle, down in South Texas, wherever you are, find us, reach out to us. I'm happy to have a call with you like Mr. Zimmerman and give you a chance to speak to Texans across the state about the issues that are going to drive the Texas legislature. So thank you again. Until next time, friends. We'll see you down the road.